the minimum basic thing to get is a jeweler's loop. Right?
Okay.
And the way you use it is basically, I'll take a pen so I can demo it.
Yeah.
Is basically you hold it to your eye, right? Some people will tell you not to close your other eye. I can't not do it. So if I'm slowly going blind, like, so be it.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to this video. It's me, Daisy from Yoseka Stationer, and today I have Josh Lax with me.
Hello everyone.
For those of you who don't know, Josh is our nib grinder local to New York, and he's been doing some appointment days here in our event space across the street from our store Yoseka in Greenpoint. And this is what, your like 4th or 5th time here?
Yeah, this is it like the 3rd month in a row, I think?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to do like 1 day a month at least, I think.
It's great, I love it, yeah.
I'm having fun, I love the space. I wish I had a space to do nibs in like this every time.
Yeah, your garage or something.
Yeah, my basement, it's literally like, well, the viewers are not gonna have any reference if I start pointing to things, but it's literally like a 8x6 space like in my basement.
Yeah, that's where you work?
Kind of, yeah, it's like contained. You know, when the kids were smaller, we wanted something that was like out of the way. They wouldn't just like stumble in, things could be put away. So this was like perfect in this like one section of our basement.
Yeah.
It's finished, so it's nice, but it's like tiny. This is like bright, there's windows.
We love having you.
I love being here.
You're welcome anytime. And Josh has also done a couple of workshops, like teaching people the basics of nib tuning and just like, right? What was it? Nib smoothing,
nib smoothing and adjustment.
Nib smoothing and adjustments.
Which I think I'm gonna do 3 of them at Stationery Fest.
Okay.
That is the discussion right now.
Be
And
on
maybe
the
some
lookout
other
for that.
programs,
Yeah.
but definitely like we're gonna try and teach 60 people total.
We're so down for that.
Yeah.
We're so down for that. So be on the lookout for more stuff from Josh. But today we're gonna do a quick video because I feel like a lot of people have a lot of questions about nib grinding. So yesterday I actually took to Instagram and I asked people to submit questions, basically like ask a nib grinder, and just like people submitted all sorts of questions.
Awesome.
So we're just gonna like rapid fire through them.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
I do have like a second to think about some of this stuff.
No.
Okay, all right. Just whatever comes out.
No, I think you do. And some of these I know are not going to be like a yes or no kind of situation. So, but
I don't think people
all...
want only yes or no. I think they want a little more something to sink their teeth into. So try to give it to you all.
Thank you. We can't wait. So I think a lot of these are like great questions and will give you a sense of like the types of levels people are at in terms of like their understanding. Nib grinding.
All right.
Okay.
And that's what I love the most.
Yeah.
I love like the variation.
Okay.
And helping people figure things out.
So here's a question. Let me see, where do I start? This is a great question, I think. So WizKid Alex, thank you for submitting this question, asks, is the general thought that the factory nib is never going to be ideal and you should always grind?
All right, that is a really good question. And I would say, no, that's not the general thought. So, and I would say general is an interesting way to put it, right? So there are, for some people, going to always be challenges with the factory way they grind. And why is that? So a lot of you out there probably journal, and some of you, I think, tend to write like at a, like more like closer to like a perpendicular angle, right? That is always going to present some degree of problem because nibs are not finished with that in mind, because that, and I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole on this, but that is not, until recently, the common way people wrote. Most of the things are optimized for like a 45-degree angle. So if you're a very high writer or an extremely low writer, then you may always need a tuning. Now, the questioner used the phrase grind there. I would say it's not really a matter of grinding because a little reshaping usually solves that problem. So if you love Sailor pens or you love Platinum pens, depending on the nib you like, you may find that it's just always scratchy or it always feels like a little dry or draggy. That just needs like a little bit of abrasives to like reshape a part of the nib that isn't optimized for your usage. So grinding really is reserved for, we're gonna totally change the shape of the nib, how it writes, what it is. Like it is sort of like a transformative process. The adjustment, tuning, smoothing, like whatever term you want to use, is really all about optimizing basically what you have so that it works the way you want it to.
Okay, that's such a good answer. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
So hopefully that answers your question, WizKid Alex.
Yeah, keep them coming. I'm all
keep 'em
fired
coming.
up now.
Next up, we have also a good question from WizKid Alex. I want to try a nib grind this year. What is your starter recommendation? I think a lot of people probably have this question. I don't know if you can answer. It's probably hard to answer, but
What's
a
hard
good
to
starting
answer.
point? Yeah.
Okay, so it started with, I think, the way to think about that type of thing, right? So usually what I say, there's like two considerations if you're just like trying to kind of go on a journey of learning with this type of thing. First is, what are you going to do with it, right? Like, are you going to be using it to jot notes very quickly? Are you going to be using this for a longer writing session? Is it an everyday pen? Is it something where you know you're gonna be like writing on your lap, right? All different kind of very unique considerations. But just as important with that is also what you want the writing to look like, because that's really what the grinding process is about. So if I want something that looks very like Gothic, right? Like really thin cross strokes and fat up and down strokes, like I would recommend to you one type of grind, which is like an italic, and there's a kind of like a sliding scale of like the drama between like the cross stroke and the downstroke. And as I'm saying this stuff out loud, I'm like, wow, I am like a super nerd when it comes to all of this. But yeah, this is real. This is all real. So yeah, so if you want that kind of Gothic look, right? If you want like a monoline, there's like a way to do like a monoline grind. Like if you like that kind of like lettering style. If you want something that has a little more flair, you can do it. If you want something super fine, like it's all just really about like what you want the pen's writing to look like when all is done. And so if you have something in mind of like how the page should look, like that's really probably the best reference. And then we can talk about like, is it appropriate for like whatever usage you might have in mind.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but maybe maybe it would help also like for people to have just like different samples of that writing.
Yeah, well, what I do is I bring kind of like, and it's like so hard to make enough of these, but I bring like a sample of different grinds with me for people to try. And like, you don't even have to have an appointment. You don't even have to like do business. You can just like literally come to my table wherever I am, Yoseka, some other place, and you could just try these and see like what you think. And what I always tell people is this stuff can be like modified beyond like what's there, you know? So they're not like set in stone.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I talk, you know, the thing is, I think what makes the community really great right now is just like how we, again, takes like these like solitary use items and like we can build in like an element of self-expression. So like if there's like something you want like your writing to say about you, like the grinding of a nib and like changing the pen can like kind of help that in some way. So something else to think about.
Okay,
you know?
self-expression.
Yeah, self-expression. Yeah, because like think about like, you know, like so much of like what is being produced these days is like being made to help us like have like some element of self-expression.
Yeah.
Like, even just like the variety of Hobonichi covers or something like that, you know? So.
Wow, nice reference. Look at you.
I'm primed. I have like the right amount of caffeine and like rest to like really hammer this one home. So you caught me at the best time, right?
Okay, here's another really good question.
Sure.
It's from 7049.winnie.
Okay.
Why do you need to grind a nib? Can't you just switch out a different nib size instead of grinding it?
Okay, all right, another great question. So the answer is you don't need to grind a nib. You can do nothing to nibs and still use the fountain pen. Like that is 100% okay. And what I say to people is like, if it's working for you and you like it, don't do anything to the nib. Like there's no requirement for anything that I do unless like you have something that's not functioning and we have to like return function to it.
Yeah, so what are some of the reasons people come to you?
So just I guess people come for, you know, they want the pen to work better for, you know, how they write, how they use it, etc. The way it came from the factory is kind of like out of step with their preferences. And then, you know, there's the idea of just changing the way the pen writes to be something different, you know? Because I guess I should say this, I mean, the way a lot of fountain pens are manufactured, it's sort of changing now, like you get more specialty stuff. But like the kind of general way nibs are made is to basically write the same line width in every direction, right? And there's, obviously that's not true of everybody. Like, you know, like the platinum coarse nib is different than like, you know, a JoWo double broad or something like that. But it's, again, just to change the way the pen writes. You can swap nibs out for certain brands. Like I'm sure you get requests like for different things. It can be more complicated for something. So for example, like if someone buys a Mont Blanc 149 and wants it to write really fine, and that you could pay Mont Blanc a lot of money to swap the nib. They will take your nib from you that you own already and then charge you for a new one. So when you think about what all that means, someone might say, well, I could do that, or I could come to Josh and for a much lower fee, have him modify it to be the exact thickness, smoothness, etc. that I want. So that is a situation where you might not swap the nib out, although you could, you would actually go to grind it.
Right. So I guess like people kind of grind or tune nibs or go see a nib meister for a couple of, like two main reasons, right? One is like their nib isn't working, they don't like it, they want to like it.
Yeah.
And then another reason is because they like their nib, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but maybe they're like bored with it, and like you said, like that self-expression thing, right? Like they want to be able to tune it so that it can express how they want to write a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it's like two main reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are back. About 4 hours later, the sun has gone down and Josh has been working. As you can see, we had to put a pause on the video because your appointment started showing up.
Yes.
And
we care about all of you more than we care about me just talking.
Absolutely. So no, but you were quite busy. You were like
we're busy. And I'd like to tell people everything I said earlier in the video came true in the course of just a few hours. So. I don't know, we could get into specifics perhaps, but I don't know if we need to.
I think that really goes to show that these are good questions and that they are like very representative of what people actually run into and what problems people come to you with, right?
Yeah, and so it's interesting you use the term problem because I don't actually think a lot of people are coming with problems necessarily. I think they come with a little bit of, they're looking for an enhancement, not necessarily like a solution, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So like the last customer we had doesn't like
Shout out to Marley.
Yeah, that's right, Marley was here. So Marley had an interesting kind of premise that brought her in. Never really had anyone like grind nibs, just brought like Tresby Echoes. What was the like?
Go, that was a Go.
The Go,
right?
yes, the Go. So she had a couple nibs, they were housed in Trisby Goes. They fill really incredibly, by the way.
Yeah, the spring.
Yeah, the spring really works. But anyway, so what Marley explained was that she didn't like the ball, like the way the feeling of like the normal like ball of tipping feels when you write. She just doesn't like it, which is kind of interesting, right? Because that is like a fundamental part of fountain pens. So what did we do? We looked at the testers, we talked about some of the things, we talked about like the nibs that do feel good and things like that, and I ended up grinding her 2 different nibs. The second one she really liked, so we then went back to the first one and made it more like the second one. And she ended up with these cursive italics, one's broad, one's medium, but she really likes it.
A little flatter tipping, right?
We can actually show the audience, we have the writing sample right here.
Yeah.
So we started, this is the first nib I did.
I don't know if you guys can see. Is it in focus?
I think so.
Okay.
So then we did the second one and then the third, right? So this was a little rounded and then we just made it progressively sharper. And she really liked it. So
that's awesome.
That's like, so to me it's like, I guess there was like a problem wrapped up in it, but it was really like just improving the experience. Which I'm all about. So that's kind of why I do this.
And you can, like you said, right, the ball is something that you think of as like very fundamental to fountain pens, right? But you were able to make it just like more accessible to her. Yeah.
What I also told her was that, you know, like a lot of the European kind of German stock nibs have the ball, right? So like if you all think of like a Estabrook nibs, right? Like they have like, you know, the ball of tipping on the front of it. If you do want something a little less conventional from that, and conventional might be the wrong term, but if you don't like that style of how they make it, like Sailor is a totally different approach to nib finishing, as is I guess pilot to some degree. Some of the really fine Japanese nibs, it's just like a totally different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And then, and then I would say also some of like the older nibs, like vintage nibs. They didn't do a ball. It's like shaped a little differently.
Differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
To get back to your questions.
Yes, there are questions.
We got through, I think, like 4 or 5 of them, so we still have a few more. We'll see if we can get through as much as we can. This is a good question that I think you can answer. Curls and Barbells asks, is there a nib grind that could give sailor-like feedback with a JoWo nib?
That is an excellent question. So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So what gives sailor nibs feedback is something very particular to them. And I wish I had I have a ball, right?
Okay.
Okay, so I use these to clean pens out, right? So if you think of, and I'll bring it closer. So if you think of like a ball of tipping, right? And you're gonna write like on this surface. So JoWo nibs, right, are really rounded. So if you wanted to, before I get into what is a sailor nib? Why is it different? So sailor, what they tend to do is they make these cuts like on the upper outside of the top of the nib, right? So it's almost like you get like a shape like this, like it's almost like a little bit triangular. The way I sometimes describe it is like the writing surface is like a little bit like oval-esque or even like pear-shaped, right? And so what's giving everybody that feedback that people really love is just that the way these cuts are on the top of the nib, okay? If you take a JoWo nib, you could add the same cuts into it and round it a little bit and shape it. So the answer is yes, and you can convert a JoWo nib into a sailor nib if you want to. And in fact, if you look at like someone who grinds like a Naginata Togi style nib, then that is they're sort of mimicking a little bit of like the sailor methodology of how they do it. So that's actually an interesting question.
Okay.
Do you have more like that? Little,
let's see. There were some geek out questions, and we can get to those in a bit, but here's like a very simple question that I think you can definitely answer.
Yes.
From Jen Bolanos, and she asked, can my medium nib be grinded to extra fine?
Yes.
Yes. So I think that is something that when I was learning about nib grinding, that is something that I had to learn, is that you can always go from, and this makes sense when you think about what nib grinding is, but like you can always go from like a bigger size to a smaller size, but you can't go from a smaller size to a bigger size because you're always just like grinding away at something instead of like adding to it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, you can't really like add, in certain unique situations, you might be able to like blunt something that's very pointed, like if it, depending on how it's like shaped, but generally speaking, you can't really go bigger.
Okay.
It'd be nice to do that.
Right, but that's like adding, you're never adding material to the nib, right?
No.
You're always taking away and reshaping from what is already there. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, here's another question that I think is interesting. A bit of it all asked, are there any fun or unique grinds for someone who's an extra fine fountain pen user? And I think that's a good question because, like we were saying before, right? Like you have to start with like more on the tipping in order to have more to work with. But what if somebody just likes extra fine? Like what can they grind to? Well,
the good news is for a bit of it all, there is plenty of options for you.
Okay.
So I would say, I'll start with a simple one, which is that you can turn an extra fine nib into an architect and you can get something really fun. Like it's like a very thin line going down and then you get like a little bit of a fatter line going across. So depending on how good your handwriting is, it could look very elegant and refined. Now, I have a client, call a customer. Client is my other thing. I have a customer who I have probably ground like 150 nibs for at this point in like the space of like 8 years. And this customer loves extra fine and like triple X nibs and like, has handed me at times like an ultra extra fine from Platinum. And they're itty bitty tiny nibs. And through working with that customer, because they want an italic on all of those, I figured out a way to like do an italic on really fine nibs that's like
you know, it could be a little sharp, but I can sometimes get it really smooth.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of incredible. And so I find that like some folks who really like those like fine nibs, but finds out they can get like a nice like cool italic and with their very elegant handwriting get like a little bit of that like kind of like vintagey sort of like line variation. They really dig it. So the answer is yes to the answer is yes.
Bit of it all.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. There's a little bit. There's a lot of it. It's all of it. You know, maybe there's all of it. We could try all of it. It just I think some of it doesn't make as much of a difference. Like a stub is not going to be as like exciting. I think it's more because you know I always find like very fine nibs are usually going to follow some element of like refinement or artistry. Like I have horrible handwriting. I just write. I'm not that self-conscious about how it looks. So I love like the blobby kind of like extra wet nibs. I think that, you know, usually I shouldn't generalize, but there's a lot of people who liking the very fine nibs and very refined nibs, like it kind of goes with that.
Okay, that's good to know. So italic, it sounds like, is a good one to try out for
I would say
the extra fine users.
I would say for anyone looking to try a nib, the cursive italic is kind of like the basic starting point for it because it's, you know, it just is. It just is. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. That's a good suggestion because I think a lot of people probably have that question. Actually. Okay. There are some like very specific grinding questions that we can ask, but I think a lot of people, specifically for you, knowing that like you taught the nib smoothing workshop, are looking to you for some answers on like what to do if they themselves just want to make some adjustments at home or do a little bit of tuning. So for instance, now Yutri asked, what are essential equipments for people who just want to do pen nib first aid at home?
Okay. Not exactly knowing what first aid means. You know, we'll go with like we'll go with some basic. Like if the nib is in two pieces, there's nothing we can recommend.
Like stitches.
I mean, I get like I don't think you could weld things, but I don't know why I was picking up the pen. That's not what I needed. Okay, I would say the main thing, the minimum basic thing to get is a jeweler's loop. Right?
Okay.
And the way you use it is basically, you know, I'll take a pen so I can demo it. Is basically you hold it to your eye, right? Some people will tell you not to close your other eye. I can't not do it. So if I'm slowly going blind, like so be it. But you put
it's worth it for the art.
You put the you bring this to your eye and you can kind of stabilize it against your face with like the nub of your thumb or the knuckle of your thumb. And then what you do is you look through and I'm trying to keep both eyes open and it's killing me right now. So, so much better, sweet relief. So basically what you do is you bring the nib into focus and you examine the nib and see what's going on. Like my left eye gets no love whatsoever, okay? So as you can see here, I can't help but tinker as I'm sitting here. Sorry, so because I noticed something when I was looking at it. So you use the loop to inspect the nibs, right? And the other thing I think that's essential that you walk around with it every day, which is your fingers. Because I tend to find if something's scratchy, like you'll feel it, whether it's on the bottom or on the top, dragging your finger like.
Really?
Yeah, here, feel this. Don't even look, just close your eyes.
Oh, I can't.
Okay. All right, does that feel okay? You should be feeling, you don't feel scratchiness? Or try it right now, all right?
Oh, I just felt it. I just felt it.
All right, try now.
Yeah.
All right, so that's like, that tells you there's something on, right? And then with the loop, you know, you can kind of see where it is, right? So what you're looking for is that like that ball of tipping as we were talking about, or whatever shape the tipping is, that there's not like something raised above the level or lowered below the level of the other. Like, you know, that's what they talk about with alignment, that like, there's not like the space, if you look head on at the tines, isn't like folded in one way or the other, right? That's like usually a simple thing. A lot of nibs, the top is gonna have like burrs and stuff to, have to deal with. And I don't know if this is the right forum to get into how to deal with it. However, I can tell you where to go. There's an excellent YouTube channel called Uncapped by a very brilliant host.
I wonder who.
And in one of the early videos on that channel talks about deburring a nib and gives some more detail and maybe even some visual examples.
It's worth checking out
on this topic.
Uncapped.
Yeah,
we'll link it below.
Look it up. All right, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate for that other person.
I appreciate
for that. Yeah. All right. So yeah, but I would say everyone should, if you want to get at what's going on, you need a loop. And this is a 10x Jewelers loop. Unfortunately, the company is like Belarusian, so this one is kind of hard to get. It's
but just a loop. Just a loop.
Yeah. Jewelry supply stores sell them. You can get them on Amazon even. The one thing I would say is avoid the ones that have a light in them. Sometimes you see that they have a light to help you see. You kind of want to see the silhouette of the nib against the light, so you don't want that light defeating you.
Okay, that's great to know. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah,
okay,
my
so
pleasure.
Just a loop and just your fingers is a great start.
And my own YouTube. Oh, this other person's YouTube channel.
That's right. The YouTube channel is key.
Has other information. And you can find some of this stuff written out online. Like you can get the Richard Binder nib workshop notes. Has some of it, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what to do. So someone's video might actually has a little bit on the technique. And also myths dispelled. You can learn about myths that go along with nibs that are dispelled.
Wow, so much is on that channel.
Yeah, there's so much.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for answering that question.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I think we have time for one last question. And this one is from Cavalucci Rosso?
Cavaluccio
Rosso.
From who knows where.
We don't know. We have an idea. What is baby's bottom and how do you know if your pen has it?
Okay, so baby's bottom is a problem with the capillary action in the nib. So capillary action is like the physics force that allows the liquid to travel out of your pen and onto the paper.
Right.
And basically what that requires is there's something called a capillary distance, I think. And basically if something's too great, space is too great, the capillary distance, the flow stops. So what is baby's bottom? So when you have a nib, I'll just show you with my fist, right? You kind of have a little bit of space in like the slit of the nib, right? Like that cut in the middle of the ball, that has a little bit of space. What the baby's bottom is there's too much, right? I'm trying to show it, right? And it actually starts to look like two butt cheeks sticking up in the air. And that's the baby's bottom. Because I guess that was like the most innocent way of describing it, using a body part. But I didn't come up with this term. But basically what happens, so if you look at it again through the loop, a necessary tool, you will see that like the tipping kind of like has like this like curved shape. Yeah, top of an arc. Yeah, right? And so what's happening in that with that is when you fill the pen with ink, the ink doesn't go all the way to the surface of the tip. It stays back because the space widens in that kind of like top of the heart. And so what happens is when you go to write and you put the nib on the paper, the space that is empty because of the problem with the capillary action has to now fill with ink. So you get it skipping. So that like first stroke has nothing and then it refills as you're writing and it works. And so that's what it is. Or it's like a hard start.
This is the tip of the nib, and like this part should be like touching the paper, but
it should be, do you mind if I touch here?
Okay,
you want it like more like that, right?
So that this is like making contact.
And this is more open. And so like the ink is hanging back here, and when you put it on the paper,
it's not touching the paper.
Yeah, but if you look at like a nib through a loop, you'll see that like the dark kind of like liquid of the ink kind of goes to the surface of the nib, and then as long as when you put it on the paper, it generally writes right away. You're looking at me like I'm saying something strange.
What you're saying that? Wait, are you saying that like the nib is supposed to fill up with ink, or not? Okay. But when in a baby's bottom, it's not. Or it is, but it's not.
The space right at the edges of the nib is not filling up with ink. And so it takes time when you start writing for the capillary action to adjust to the fact that it's now on paper. So you get like the hard start or the skipping, depending on how it's going. And I always think that like the baby's bottom begets more problems because when you get frustrated, you start pressing the pen into the paper, banging it on the paper. And they're all like normal human reactions, but in some ways like it does kind of invite that issue. And so, all right, so the question is, what is baby's bottom? I think we've exhaustively answered that.
Yeah.
How do you know if your pen has it? Well, it could be if your pen is skipping or having hard starts, right? But there's other things that may cause those problems. So that's not necessarily like an indicator that you have it. It just that you definitely have it. It may just indicate that you do have it. But again, it goes back to, and that really great question, you want to look at it from with a loop, and like it is noticeable. Like it sounds like weird to say, but like if you look at it, it is noticeable. Like
from
it looks like
surface of the nib or the back of the nib?
So if you look at it like this, right?
Okay.
Like you'll see. At the place where the nib usually touches the paper, like that kind of like humps, you know, on either side with a valley in it that has like a dark liquid in it.
Okay.
That is what it is.
Oh, okay. So because that is like the back side is where you're, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they could have called it humps instead of baby's bottom, but the baby's bottom, I guess, sounds a little more.
A heart.
Yeah, the hard top.
Heart top
nib.
Yeah, let's rename it.
Okay, let's start it. #heart top.
But baby's bottom's also cute.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it is like, you know, most people, I guess, are familiar with like a little bum sticking in the air. I don't know.
Yeah.
They also know about hearts.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know. But yeah, it's basically, there's too much space.
Okay.
And it's caused usually out of a good thing, which is someone over polished the inside, thinking it's going to make it smooth, and they just, you know.
Somebody was trying to do something good there. But they just
certain brands are notorious for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't it usually like more common with broad nibs?
Or
is it not?
Yeah, it could be. No.
Really?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no. I mean, it's common with it's not common, but it you see it, I see it with everything.
Okay.
Like someone today had like a
really?
fine nib with baby's bottom. Yeah. Because even it's sometimes like we're describing like typically what it looks like, it can manifest a little bit differently, but that's a conversation for another day.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So these are all of your questions that you submitted for Josh. So thank you all so much for giving us questions. And I'm sure these are, as you've seen today from all of your clients, they are typical questions and reasons why people come to a nib grinder such as Josh. So these are great questions. Thank you for asking them. Is there anything else you want to add, Josh?
No, I look forward to seeing you all at Yoseka at some point.
Wow, so scary. That was scary.
Was it scary? Was I being scary? I thought I was being nice. I thought I was being like really sweet and cool. That was scary?
I'm sorry. I'm
like
sorry.
hitting my mic. I'm sorry if that.
Or else.
Yeah. Well, I just, you lean in and you give them a little bit. Hey,
I'm sorry.
Come on over. Come on over.
We can't wait to see you here.
Yeah. Bring nib.
Okay.
Bring nib.
Yeah, bring nib. And check out Uncapped, which we will link because Josh does very thorough technical videos on his channel of how to repair and fine-tune nibs. And he also teaches workshops. So check one of those out. We'll definitely be doing more at Yoseka. We'll be doing some at Stationery Fest. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We'll do more videos like this. And check out Josh's channel, Uncapped.
All right. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, actually, I don't think you're. Maybe. Oh, me. I'm not connected.
Toast. No, it's got me. You can learn about myths that go along with nibs that are dispelled.
Wow, so much. So much is on that channel.
Yeah, there's so much. The science of ink.
What a saint.
To gift the world this knowledge is truly a wonderful thing. There's a great episode on the science of ink.
Autumn, stop. Wait, Autumn, stop. I can see you crouching. It's funnier that you're crouching.
Yeah. Well, I don't think she realized that this was like open to view.
Sorry, yeah. No, it's like funnier because I see you crouching in the background.
I knew you were there, and I wanted to be like, should I be like, Autumn, get up, Autumn.
I don't know if you're gonna have it in there, but I think that would be hilarious.
We might keep it.
We should just have bloopers at the end because there's a lot of them. I feel like we're really developing.
Okay.